Okay, welcome to this month's edition of the Laire webinar. I'm Josh Horton alongside Kristen Cahill.
Hey guys.
And we're a couple of account executives here at Laire. And we love to talk about capturing more leads. That's a big part of our jobs. A lot of our clients care deeply about the leads and that they're generating and the quality of those leads and turning them into business. And, ultimately we always say if it doesn't make money, it doesn't really make sense. So.
Exactly.
Sorry for the technical difficulties that we had with our link today. Unfortunately, YouTube Live didn't like us today, but we're recording this over Zoom today and making sure we get it out to those of you who did, in fact, register ahead of time. So, Kristen, this is a big thing that a lot of our clients talk about. Capturing more leads, generating more leads. A lot of times we're talking to our clients about okay, website traffic is important and leads are important and all of these things are important. So with kind of our webinar strategy going month by month, talking about things that we get asked a lot about. So we're excited to dive in a lot, and I know you care deeply about leads too.
Yeah, absolutely. Visitors are one thing, but leads are what's really important. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Yeah. And then just to give you all a little update of what we are going to cover here today. First, we'll jump into a high-level overview of the true meaning of a lead. So there's marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, disqualified leads, all of those, and we'll talk about those first. Then we'll jump into the actual lead gen strategy. Figuring out who you need to involve, what you need to do, when you need to do it, and all of that. And then the third part we'll cover in this webinar is actually generating leads. So talking about the leads first, and then diving into how we can actually generate those through different tactics that we use and that we've seen have been successful for our clients here at Laire. And the last thing that's important is how to tell if it's working. So the nice thing about inbound marketing in general is you can really understand whether or not your strategies and tactics are working based on the data that is readily available to you, through those different KPIs. And Kristen's got a ton of KPIs to talk about. So that is a big part of this overall strategy, and one that really the decision makers need to know at all times to justify the amount of money they're spending on their marketing efforts. So dive right in here first with the true meaning of a lead. Website traffic is important. We love to see traffic go up. We love to see new visitors, especially coming to the site. But there is some sort of vanity metric component to that, where your website traffic is going up, great, but why is it going up? Is it relevant? Are people bouncing right away? Different things like that. So we need to make sure that the website is generating that right kind of traffic. And Kristen, I know in your experience, you've seen a lot of instances where website traffic is going up, but the new contacts aren't necessarily going up. So we took a screenshot here to kind of show a scenario there. Can you talk the viewers through what's happening here on this slideshow, or what's happening here on the screenshot, and what it means?
Absolutely. So, as you said, one of the things that we get asked the most is, what's the difference between a visitor and a lead? I've got 1,900 people coming to my website. That's great, but what does that mean as far as, marketing and sales? So, as you mentioned, vanity metric, we'll definitely talk more about those when we get to KPIs, but we do want to keep seeing traffic increase, but if that increased traffic is not, relevant traffic, if it's not people who are actually interested in your product or service, then that really doesn't do you any good. We want to make sure that the people that are coming to your website are people who are actually going to be interested and engaged. And we want to also include, conversion opportunities across your site so that those people, the relevant, interested people that really could benefit from your product or service do convert and become actual leads. A lead, from our perspective, is just anybody who's interacted on your website and given us information. So if a visitor is just somebody who's come to the site, they may have clicked a blog through social media or searched for something and come up with a post that you guys have that's relevant to them, but they might not actually be interested in you. A lead, on the other hand, is someone who engages further. Maybe on that blog they see a downloadable ebook that interests them, that kind of helps give them a little bit more information about whatever problem they're trying to solve. And so in exchange for that great relevant content that you have on your website, they're going to give you some information like their name, their email, maybe what company or industry that they're in. Typically, you don't want to ask a whole lot of information of a lead because they're just somebody who's starting to get to know who you are, but that's kind of a great starting point.
And just at a high level, can you kind of explain to the viewers here what the inbound methodology is? I know we talk a lot about that: attract, convert, close, delight, and also the awareness, consideration, decision, and that delight stage as well.
Absolutely. So, the inbound approach is one of generating really helpful, relevant content. So if somebody, has a problem and they're Google searching, what that problem is, say, I have a bump on my arm, I'm not sure if it's a bug bite or if I just banged myself into a table, they're going to start by searching, hey, bump on my arm looks like a big red knot, what could that be? And then they're going to start diving in and looking to see what that might be. So by giving them helpful, relevant content, you might say, oh, okay, yeah, that looks like a spider bite. You should probably go to the doctor, or just keep an eye on it for a little bit and see if it changes. There's different solutions to that problem. If you're a doctor, for example, you could say, hey, here's an appointment scheduler. Go ahead and get scheduled for our doctor to come in and for you to come in and check it out. So, there's all kinds of different ways to bring people in, but having that helpful, relevant content to start is a great place.
Yeah. And I think too, when we're looking at keywords that we're trying to optimize for and the kind of website traffic that we want, the biggest proponent of that is knowing who your buyer is. And we'll talk a little bit more about buyer personas later in the webinar. But that's a big deal. If you are seeing website traffic increase at high rates without relevant new contacts coming in as well, then there might be a problem with your messaging, or you might be seeing you really want to monitor where most of your traffic is coming from. So if you've got, let's just say in this example here, 2,000 new visitors, and that's a 50% increase month over month, you should ideally see contacts go in line with that. There's all sorts of different variables that can go into it. So you might have had a popular social media post or a popular blog post that is relevant to your current customers, or people who are currently leads already, or people just familiar with your brand. So that might be why they didn't convert. So not just taking a look at this and saying, oh no, my sessions are up, but my new contacts are down. No need to panic right away. Really just looking in further at the data, and that'll be a big part of what we talk about later in the webinar is understanding how to look at your data and those KPIs that you should be tracking, and how to make decisions based on those is an important thing to consider. So the next question that I have, or the next portion of this webinar, so to speak, is that lead generation strategy. So this truly is the first step in turning your website into a lead generation machine. We like to use that term a lot here. We build a lot of websites, and the website is the foundation. But you should also be considering, what your overall goal is. So when you're creating a website, you're not just creating it to be this beautiful website. You can have the most beautiful website in the world, but if people don't find it, then it doesn't make any sense. So what are your most important things to consider in a lead generation strategy?
Sure. So the place that I always start is by looking at your analytics. To your point, you could have an amazing site that, with the right amount of traffic converts, 95% of your visitors into leads, but if nobody finds it, then it's not going to do you any good. So I would start by looking to see, how much traffic is getting to the site. What are the keywords that the site's already ranking for? Are there gaps? Are there, obvious holes of content that we don't have that people are searching for? So typically that's where I would start. And then with that in mind, looking at those keywords and looking at the type of content you have already, I would say, let's fill in those gaps. Let's create a content plan. Let's target relevant keywords that get, good traffic and that we can try and rank for. Maybe they're not as difficult. That would be the first place as far as getting people to your website. While you're building that, because that unfortunately doesn't happen overnight, every new blog and every new web page that you put out is great. It helps increase the SEO value for your site, but it doesn't necessarily bring in, thousands of new people in a day or even a week or even 6 months. Sometimes it takes a while for those posts and those blogs to kind of catch fire, so to speak. And so in the background, even if you start with 100 visitors a month, even if you're starting very small, looking at your website, it could be beautiful, but is it converting? If you're not converting, that's a problem. That means that we have a lot of work to do. So start by looking at areas on the website that we could add conversion opportunities. Now, taking a step back from that, do you have any content for people to convert with? If you don't have any downloadable content or anything that we could, what we call gate on the website through a form, we would want to start there first so that we have something that's valuable that people want to exchange their precious data for. So creating a content strategy from that perspective, it's not just blogs, it's not just website pages, it also includes white papers or case studies or awareness level checklists, things like that can just get people started. There's different content. You mentioned the awareness levels. There's different types of content for each stage of the buyer's journey. So, that example I used earlier with the doctor's visit, if I've got a bite on my arm, there might be some different checklist items that I might want to look for. What does it look like? Is it swelling? Were you recently in the woods? Things like that could help narrow down what your actual ailment is. For another industry, it might be, getting started with cloud migration. What are the things I need to keep in mind as I'm starting to think about this? So that could be really great awareness level content. A case study could be more consideration. That's people that have, kind of figured out that they know they have a specific solution they're looking for, but they haven't quite figured out who they want to work with. So if you have a case study that depicts a time that your company did something really well for a customer, that helps people to learn how you work with customers and the success that they could have if they partnered with you. Sure. And then, decision level content would be something like a demo or a consultation. At that point, they're very heavily considering working with you. They're just kind of at that tipping point of making that final decision. So having that consultation with your sales team could be that final step in bringing them fully on board. So really making sure that you have a well-rounded content plan is incredibly important as far as lead gen strategy.
Sure. And one of the things too that we see a lot in the onboarding process is, if we come across a new client, oftentimes when we're, explaining that inbound methodology and the buyer's journey, if there is content, or if the company usually has content to start with, most of that content usually falls in that decision stage. So, just thinking of manufacturers, for example, you can go to a manufacturer's site and they'll probably, that homepage will be like, oh, well, that's a metal manufacturer based on their, their homepage or whatever. And then you go and you see, okay, well, I can submit a quote, or that's about it. So
right.
One of the things that we try to do is fill in those gaps. What is the journey that buyer takes from the moment they realize they have a problem or an opportunity until the moment they solve for that problem or opportunity. And another great thing too that HubSpot really did in the past year is they've really changed that mindset from a funnel to a flywheel. And also keeping in mind that the delight stage is a pretty big part of that now. It's always cheaper to go out and have a repeat customer than it is to generate new business. So make sure in your strategy you're optimizing for all of those things. And there were some great ideas there that Kristen had for the awareness stage, those checklists that we talk about. And you're on a lot of accounts and you've got a ton of experience in inbound marketing. So what would be an example of, a client that you've seen kind of come in and they didn't really have much content along the lines of that awareness stage or, that consideration stage. And then, you've implemented some strategies and tactics to then solve for that and really fill the top of that funnel.
Sure. So I've worked with, as you said, a lot of different clients. A specific example is this company that we've worked with where, they do equipment financing. And so, again, they were kind of perfect example. They came in, they had a lot of, speak to our sales team, apply for a loan, that kind of thing. But not everybody's ready the first time they come to your site. They don't know you necessarily. They don't trust you. Not that, they don't like you necessarily, but they just don't know you at all. And you really need to build that trust, especially, if you're a company where your price point is very high. You really need to know, like, and trust the people that you're working with. And, we see it all the time with the big brands. Doritos spends a lot of money at the Super Bowl just to make sure that people are thinking of them. They're gaining that trust just by repetitive nature of kind of putting those commercials out. Well, not every business can put out a $5 million commercial. So we need to be a little bit more tactical in our approach. And, so creating content like steps to get ready for applying for a loan, or what's all the paperwork that you need to gather, those kinds of checklists. We put together a guide for people, all of the things you need to think about when you're, starting an equipment financing, opportunity, and why you might want to do that, and all of this. It helps just kind of bridge that gap between, I really want to buy a new piece of equipment, and I really want to pick this company to be my partner. It makes, by that company, by us putting out that information, it puts that company as the authority. It shows, hey, we know what we're talking about, and we're also here to help you. We're not just trying to take your money. And that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, which kind of leads us right into the, those tactical steps that we're talking about. Having that strategy is great, but at the end of the day, you have to execute. If you don't execute as a marketer, there's going to be people who are going to be upset, or there's going to be, there's going to be consequences. People invest in marketing so they can make money. And that's something where, having that strategy and having that website that's set up correctly is important, but then going through and actually executing is another thing. So I think you brought up a great point from an equipment financing standpoint. And, Doritos, you think of Doritos, everybody likes Doritos, but sure, I can forget that I like Doritos. Right. But if I see, a Super Bowl commercial, I'll remember, Cool Ranch Doritos are pretty great. I'm going to go out and buy some. Whereas, to bring that over to the manufacturing side, or equipment financing, or, any other industry that has a longer sales process, that really, I think, solidifies the importance for consistent content and relevant content over time. Because if I'm running a construction company, I might know that I need 3 new bulldozers. So I might be researching in July because I've got, so many jobs, and I know that, it's been a tough year, so I'm going to need new equipment in the following year. But then I might research it at a high level in July, and then come back to it, when the season's, not as busy in, let's say January. But where this company comes in is they can be creating relevant content every month, every week, every month, every quarter, and pushing it to, that person who's actively searching for their product. So I think that's a great opportunity. And that also stresses the importance of that top of the funnel opportunity, where somebody can, say, okay, I want this equipment financing checklist or preventative maintenance checklist for my, bulldozer. So they might download that in July. And if they download it in July, you nurture them all the way until they're ready to go out and seek that new solution. So is that something that you've done in terms of a tactic, and just kind of walk our viewers here through the process of, from, putting together that strategy for the whole buyer's journey to actually execute?
Absolutely. So another example that we've actually been working on recently is a new company that has a SaaS product platform. And, we know at a high level the things that we need to put together in order to make that marketing effort successful. Optimizing their website, as I mentioned earlier, you want to start there. Blogging and putting out relevant, helpful content is great. But this is a company where, they might have a new product and we might not know it. So the best place, and this is something that, HubSpot says, and lots of people say, sales and marketing, a lot of times they don't talk to each other all that often. And that makes our job very difficult. You know, at the end of the day, we're not the ones talking to the customers directly and having those, you know, one-on-one really great conversation. So the place I always like to start when trying to, you know, brainstorm content, you can look at the analytics, you can look at, you know, the data, but really going straight to the source and what are these people's pain points? What are they looking for? What are their problems? What do they need? What do you need to help you be more successful in your sales? We'll talk a little bit more about KPIs, but this leads into that. So, you know, really asking, we talked a little bit about, you know, what a lead is and what a qualified lead is. What qualities do those people have? What do they come in struggling with? Oftentimes businesses think, oh, we can serve everybody. We can, you know, everybody's a good customer. At the end of the day, that's not true. And the businesses that are really successful, they know that. They know exactly who their end target is. They know, you know, those buyers' personas. They know exactly what their demographic is. They know what roles they're in. They know, you know, what exactly they need. And they also know the pain points that their product or service solves for. So having that information, armed with that information, we can take that, turn it into great content, and then build out that strategy. We can also, you know, FAQs is huge. You know, if I have a question that I've been trying to figure out and you're the person who can answer it, I'm automatically going to have a little more faith in you.
And you talk about FAQs real quick to jump in. That's a great place to start if you don't have any content.
Absolutely.
And it's also a nice way to align sales and marketing in your organization, because the marketing team is going to have to talk to the sales team, and the talks are going to be, you know, they're not going to be screaming matches. This talk is going to be, okay, you know, sales guy, I'm the marketer. I want to go and I want to create content that I know your people, the people or prospects that you're working with are asking you. So if I'm a salesperson, I'll say, yeah, here are the 20 questions I get the most, and here's how I answer them. And then the marketing person goes and they create content for all of that. And then can you talk about the advantage from an SEO perspective of having that FAQ you know, section, and how having an FAQ ties in with long tail keywords and ultimately more contacts?
Absolutely. So we talked about doing keyword research earlier. You know, if you are, let's just say, a marketing automation platform, you can try and go after the keyword marketing automation platform, but that is a really, really highly competitive keyword. It's also very broad. So, you know, a way to try and capitalize on some, you know, deeper, more, you know, segmented searches is marketing automation platform for technology, or marketing automation platform that does X. And those kinds of keywords are what we call long tail keywords. And they typically have a lower search volume, but the intent is a lot higher. It's clearer. You know, how do I set up my marketing email automation? That is a very clear question, and the content that would pop up would be helpful, hopefully helpful, relevant answers to that question. So by using those FAQ questions that your sales team has, you can create an FAQ page, you can create blog posts, you can do, you know, a lot of times people do comparison contrast, you know, HubSpot versus Marketo, things like that, you know, people are just looking for information. You can capitalize on that. But if you don't know what it is that people are asking when they get to the sales team, it's hard to know what content to create around those. So yeah, definitely a great place to start.
Yeah, and the one major thing to consider with all of your marketing efforts is going to be that ugly B word of budget. So, you know, talking about budget and, you know, what is your marketing budget for the year? Are you setting aside enough money for marketing? Are you, you know, using that marketing budget to the best of your ability? So an all-in-one platform like HubSpot might not be a great fit for everybody, but depending on what you're trying to accomplish, what the size of your company is, and, you know, what your end goal is, you know, there are plenty of companies out there right now who have a marketing budget that supports HubSpot, but they might be using, you know, all sorts of different platforms, and
or
you know, they might be, yeah, exactly. They could be using a spreadsheet as their CRM. They could be using, you know, MailChimp as their marketing automation platform. They could be using something like Opt-in Monster to, you know, get some leads. You know, what something like HubSpot does in a lot of cases, in pretty much every case for all of our clients, is they'll have their website on HubSpot, they'll have their marketing on HubSpot, they'll have their, blog on HubSpot. Anything that they do that is related to marketing and sales, for the most part, can all go into HubSpot, which is really great. But on that same token, not everybody tuning into this webinar is, HubSpot's not going to be in their budget range, or, they might be, a one-man show or a one-woman show. So the tactics that we're talking through here, they're relevant. You can do them, across many different platforms in many different ways. We just talk about HubSpot because, it's a great way to put it all into one place. But we certainly understand, if you're a one-person show and you're running a smaller business, but you still want to practice all of these, definitely do it. You're going to get the advantages, and as you grow, that's when you grow into something like a HubSpot, or, the really, really big companies using, a CRM like a Salesforce.
Right.
So there is a great way to think about all the tactics, and, something like HubSpot, just to, not to keep talking about HubSpot, but they'll basically not do it for you, but there are some great templates in there. And really, HubSpot's a program where you kind of follow the bouncing ball, and I think that's why they've been so successful, is they've made the user experience really, really easy for their customers.
Absolutely. And one last thing before we kind of transition off of that is they also take, speaking of taking people's pain points and turning it into relevant content, they take pain points and go ahead and fix problems or add new features as they're getting that feedback, which is, really helpful. One thing we didn't touch on yet that I do want to kind of circle back on is email and automation. We kind of talked at a high level, but the example that you spoke about earlier with the business owner who wanted to buy some new equipment, that's where email and automation really comes into play. If somebody searches in July, as you said, and they find your company and they think, oh, this could be a great, great company that could help me, but they're not quite ready for that next step. I do this all the time. I think, oh, I want to, maybe get my hair cut in a few weeks. Let me do some research. Let me look around at hair salons, but I'm not necessarily going to go ahead and book that appointment today. I'll circle back and I'll, do it at a later time. The people who are going to keep, I'm going to keep top of mind are the people who are going to continue to reach out. They're going to continue to give me helpful, relevant content. So, that gentleman who's searching for, equipment loan, if he never hears from your company again, he might do another Google search, and maybe this time he finds somebody else. And he goes with that company. If, you're able to continue to reach out and give helpful, useful content via email, he's much more likely then to choose your business when it comes time to actually make that next step.
Or he may have also downloaded another offer from another company where maybe it's, some sort of, loan calculator from a competitor. So, certainly competition is great for the end product for, us as consumers. But where you have to do in terms of a competitive advantage is making sure that you're taking, as much of the opportunity as you can to nurture your prospects, and doing that through, marketing automation. Email is a great way to do that, because, if your competitor is doing marketing automation and you're not, there's going to be, there's no chance for them to forget about an email, but certainly human error. People get busy. It happens.
And the last thing on this list is marketing analytics. And I know we touched a little bit on that, and we'll be diving into KPIs, but the worst thing, well, not the worst thing, but one of the worst things you could do is to set up that email automation, set it and forget it, never look at it again, and just hope that it's performing. I can't tell you how many times I've started working with a company who's had an email like that, where they had an email automation, and they wrote it, they put it out there, and it's, every time somebody downloads that shopping guide, cool, they're getting an email, but is it performing? Are people engaging with it? Are they even clicking on the email to open it? Is your subject line engaging?
And what do you want them to do after that?
Right. What's the next step? Are you driving them to an end goal, rather than just sending them, emails for the sake of sending emails? So that's something that we always want to do, is go back and look. And, if you set out a campaign, give it a little time, maybe 6 weeks, to kind of marinate and get you some data, but then look back and see, is it performing? Are there emails that are open, the open rates are better? How can we change this content, the copy, to make people convert or click through at a higher rate? So, all of these tactics that we're talking about are really important, but making sure that you're, monitoring their performance is also very important.
Yeah, and one quick final thing too to kind of wrap up the tactics, and also to tie it back to the strategy is, you can't do all of the tactics all at once. And
Sure.
certain tactics might work better for other industries and all that. So it's all about figuring out what works for you. So say we have a client, for example, who, we're blogging for them once a week. We're, doing a conversion offer for them once a quarter. We're setting up a marketing automation workflow and an email. Like, yeah, that's all great, and that all works, but it's really finding what works for you. And the only way to do that is, by monitoring your KPIs, which is where we're going next. And I know this is a big talking point for Kristen. She is a marketing analytics guru who is obsessed with making sure our customers know how to monitor their ROI. So, like this said, now that you've done the work, you just have to, see if it's working or not, know where to double down and all that.
Absolutely. And so before I dive into what we're looking at here, I want to talk a little bit about vanity metrics. Josh, you mentioned this earlier. These are things that can kind of trip you up. They're things that you can measure, absolutely, but they really don't tell you a whole lot, and they really don't give you anything actionable. These are things like impressions, page views, social media likes, trial users. They're nice numbers, and when they're going up, when they're increasing, that's fabulous. We love that. It makes us feel good. But it doesn't necessarily mean that your marketing is working. It doesn't necessarily give you anything you can tweak or change to improve upon. And they really just don't give you the kind of information you can act on. So when you're trying to come up with KPIs, you really want to look at things that align with your SMART goals. And as a marketer, you should always have SMART goals. Those are goals that are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're not pie in the sky, someday maybe we can achieve them. They're realistic, and they're also timely. You don't want to just say, someday we want to have 100 contacts in our list. You want to say, okay, in 3 months' time, we'd love to have, 25 leads coming in, or, we want to have 50 new blog subscribers. Whatever that metric is, you want to give it time, but you want to also be specific, and you want it to be something you can actually track. So with that in mind, you want to make sure that these KPIs you have, again, you can adjust them, you can change them, you can use them to tweak your budget. Let's say maybe you have an increased budget and you want to know, where should I put this extra marketing dollars? Or maybe unfortunately your budget's gone down. You want to know what areas can you cut that won't have a really drastic effect. So really good marketing KPIs that you can track are things like traffic to lead ratio. So again, sessions, visitors to your site going up, awesome, great. Doesn't mean anything if we're not converting them into leads. So we want to really focus in on that traffic to lead or new contact ratio. That would be your overall site conversion. You also want to measure your lead to customer ratio. If your marketing team is bringing a whole bunch of people in, but they're getting to the sales team and the sales team isn't closing them, or maybe the sales team actually thinks they're all terrible, we should know that as marketers and be able to change the messaging that we're using, or add in other layers to qualify them better so that the sales team isn't wasting their time, but that they're also able to close. I can't say how many times I've had that disconnect where I didn't have that close connection with the sales team. And on our side, we're thinking, hey, we brought you guys 100 new leads. And on their side, they're like, well, 75 of them, don't have the right budget, and the rest of them just weren't ready. So really didn't do us any good for this, this month. So again, that sales and marketing alignment and having those conversations is really important. And with that, that KPI, if you are in sync, you can have those conversations if you're measuring it. Landing page conversion rates. We didn't actually really talk a whole lot about landing page specifically, but earlier when we talked about gating those content offers as checklists, as case studies, typically they're housed on a landing page that gives some, beneficial information about what the content is. It talks about the value of why you should even want to read it. And so that would be on a landing page with a form. You want to make sure that landing page is converting well. If you're sending, let's say you have a Google ad campaign and you're sending them to a landing page to download a pricing sheet, for your product or service, but you're sending 100 people there and only 5 of them download. That's a problem. And it's not necessarily just a landing page problem. It could be an ad problem, that the ad and the landing page aren't matched up, but clearly there's an issue and some changes need to happen. If you're tracking those things, that's where you can start diving in and making some of those changes. Some other things you can look at are organic traffic. Organic traffic is the kind of traffic that you get organically through searches, making sure that you have increased keyword value in SEO. And that's what we like to call free traffic. You're not paying Google or Facebook to get that traffic. It's literally just the content that you're pushing out, bringing in new people. Social media, again, you can look at engagement, you can look at impressions, but if people aren't clicking through, branding is really good or social media is really good for branding and making sure people are, aware of who you are. But if you want to use it for actual conversion, then you should be tracking those conversion rates and seeing what kinds of posts are leading more people to your website, because it can be great for branding and awareness, but it also can be used as a lead gen driver.
For sure.
Yeah. And then, some other things like sales revenue. If your sales team has, sales goals that they want to hit, it's really great for the marketing team to know what those goals are so that, again, you're in sync. And also you can tie back that revenue to your marketing efforts. As I mentioned earlier, if you're doing a Google campaign, and you're spending $5,000 for a month of the campaign, but your return on that investment is only $1,000. Well, you're probably not going to continue having that $5,000 budget very long. But if your campaign can be tied to, $10,000 or $100,000 in revenue, that would be a good place to put a little bit more of your marketing. So again, really looking at what these metrics are, but then also using those metrics to give you a clear path for, next steps or optimizations, things like that.
And to piggyback on all that too, there are going to be certain people in your organization who care about certain things. So for example, if you're dealing with the CEO at your company, the things that he's going to care about is net new revenue, cost per acquisition, things like that. So in order to know what KPIs you should be tracking and really what marketing efforts you should be pursuing, you have to know the economics of your customer. So if you know that every new lead, costs you on average, let's say $11, and it's based on what you're doing right now, you could then say, okay, are all of these efforts, bringing that cost per acquisition down, or is it increasing my cost per acquisition? So really understanding the economics of your customer is going to be very important. And at the end of the day, all of the things that we talk about are great, and all the, those marketing tactics and the marketing strategy, all that is all awesome. But at the end of the day, if you're not driving net new revenue,
right,
you can't tie it back to anything. And it's the kind of the blessing and the curse of inbound marketing.
Sure.
Inbound marketing or content marketing is all trackable, so we know exactly how many dollars we're generating from even one blog post, if we wanted to get down to it.
Absolutely.
And to kind of sum up the analytics too, there is a way, there's certain softwares out there like DataBox here that we're showing. You could bring in all of your KPIs onto one dashboard. And one thing I know that, Kristen, you do this too, but with my clients, I'll have different dashboards for, let's say, a C-level employee than I would for a marketing employee. Or even, the CMO is going to care differently or want to see different metrics than the CEO. So CEO might care about, leads and, new customers and revenue. Whereas, the marketing person might care about a lot of those vanity metrics. We talk about them as vanity metrics, but at the end of the day, you can look at all of those and those can tell a marketer's story. So, if we know that things are going up or down, we know we need to make adjustments. So, and just to kind of end this, this webinar here on how to capture more leads, what is your, a couple of takeaways that, if you were listening to this webinar that you would want to really, take back to your team and, implement?
I think the biggest thing, again, is to align with sales and marketing. I can't stress that enough. At the end of the day, as a marketer, it's just going to make your job a lot easier, and it's going to make your job a lot more effective. And I know that's sometimes difficult to get your sales team on board with some of the, great new brilliant ideas that you have, but it's really a conversation that needs to happen. And, if it has to come from top down, then, that's kind of what needs to happen. You need to get, your CEO, your CMO, everyone should be on board, and get buy-in and get people excited because, at the end of the day, marketing is meant to increase sales. So you guys should be on the same team. I think the other thing to take away are a lot of these tactics. If you're not doing some of them, take a look at your metrics, take a look at these analytics, see where there are gaps. Are you putting out a lot of decision level content? Do you maybe need some more awareness level content across your site? What keywords are you ranking for? Do you need to, create new blogs and expand in that area? Are you blogging, and it's doing great, but you're not leading anybody back through those blogs? Maybe you've got a post that gets 1,000 hits per month, but, it doesn't have any conversion points on it. There's so many different pieces to the puzzle. And I think, just having that strategic starting point kind of helps you build out the ideas of what your next steps need to be.
Yeah, I think that's all great information, and certainly not to plug ourselves, but we live and breathe this stuff every single day. We're in all the platforms. We're in HubSpot on a daily basis, DataBox, and honestly, this webinar could have been 48 hours long with
sure.
all the tactics out there and the strategy things that that we could have talked about. So can't stress this enough. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about here, or things that we didn't cover that you may have wanted us to cover, definitely reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Absolutely.
And yeah, stay tuned. Our next webinar will be in March. We're going to go through a little bit about CRM systems and seeing going through different CRMs and how to figure out what CRMs make sense for certain companies and really present some opportunities and to go through different CRMs and see how they're all different. So
yeah, check it out.
Yeah, that's about all I had. Have a great rest of your month. And also check out our blogs. We're blogging all the time.
Yeah.
There's blogs from Kristen, there are blogs from me, there's blogs from anybody on our team. And they'll really dive into those tactics and get everybody all excited about lead generation. So yeah, have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.